I'm Training. I'm your host, Paul Turner, and today we want to talk about something that I saw on a Facebook youth ministry page, and it was a question where the youth worker could not. It was a cry for help. It was if I could title this anything, I would call it "Help! My students won't listen." And I think we've all been in that situation before, where we have a group of kids that are just either hard-headed or kind of miss the point, or or maybe they're not Christians and they really don't understand the value of what's happening within the context of your program. So there's a whole bunch of things that ran through my mind when thinking about this subject. I wanted to bring that to you today and offer you maybe a few tips that may help you in getting your kids to kind of tune in a little bit better. And it doesn't matter whether you have 10 kids or 100 kids. These things that we all have to look at within the context of our youth ministry, and we have to remember that these are teenagers, and there are challenges that go along with that. Um, the first thing I would say is about our when we get up to share a message. Maybe you've worked hours on a message. Maybe you have. Know, just poured yourself into this thing, and you think this is going to be the greatest message ever, and if I could just preach this message or teach this message, and if they would just get it, you know I think what happens is we elevate our message, and we say our message, we elevate the time and the effort we put in. We get disappointed with our kids when they don't want to listen to it, and we're offended by that. We're offended by the fact that they won't listen to the hard work that we put in, and there's no way to describe to them. I mean, you could get up there and say, "Guys, I spent hours on this," and they're just, texting, and they don't care how many they might care how many hours you put in. I don't know, but all that to say is probably the first thing is this: is don't be offended when they don't listen. I guess because if you put time, energy, effort, all those things into it, don't worship your message. We shouldn't worship our messages. I'm a big offender of that myself. Is that I just thought, man, if I could just get this message across, and if they would just listen, and I eventually had to just say, look, you know what? This isn't my message. This is God's message, and I need to be honest with my message. The fact that, look, I can't elevate the time, effort, value, all the things that I put into it based on the fact that these kids don't want to listen to it, or tuning out, or the end result is maybe I missed it. Maybe I just put too much value into the message itself. The second thing I would ask you to consider is this: consider the learning styles of your group. If your kids are tuning out, it's possible that your learning style and their learning styles maybe aren't matching up. Maybe you have a bunch of kids in there who are very super active oriented, who say, "Look, I love to participate in the message rather than just sit and listen. I have a hard time sitting and listening." So make your messages more active to help that kid out. Maybe you have kids that are very hands on, that need to kind of have something going on. Maybe give them something as a tool or something that would help them tune in a little bit better to what your message is. There could be all kinds of reasons, but I would consider looking at the learning styles within your group and saying, what can I do to maybe match what I'm doing with the kind of, you may have a bunch of active students, 80% of them maybe that, and two of them may be very good at sitting and taking notes and things like that. And you may have to switch your styles a little bit. The third thing that I would say is this: is make it as visual as possible. Make it helping your kids become visual learners. So if you have a prop, if you have a something, once again, they put their hands on, or something you hand out, something that gives them sort of involvement within your message, that will help maybe not only with them focusing on what you're going to do, but on what your message is going to be about, but also help them remember their message a little bit better. So consider that when you're preparing your message. Is there what is the best way for me to make this message as visual as possible to grasp the attention of the kids that I have? Another thing I'd recommend is changing up the room. And two of these things, by the way, I just want to say down below, I have two pages that I created on my Squidoo site. One is about sermon illustrations that you can tap into, and one is about changing up your room, which is what I want to talk about tonight. I offer some tips there. And also on this YouTube channel, there's a section called That'll Preach, which I offer some other sermon illustrations, things like that. But you can check that out later on after this message. So in changing up your room, maybe it's a matter of you have a small group meeting in a very large room. That can affect the temperament of the kids and the context of the message. You may have a very large group in a very small room, which may also affect the temperament of the kids within there, and they're struggling because they're either too tightly packed in or they're very small in a very big space. So try changing the room up, try meeting somewhere else, try rearranging the chairs, try put things in a circle versus everything's got to be up front, everybody facing you. Maybe you do a circle of chairs and you stand in the middle of that circle. All those things can help with that. Ask yourself, am I preaching or teaching? There are people, and myself included, who thought that preaching all the time, and it doesn't matter whether you had 10 kids or 5 kids, you were just getting up there and you were just going to let that message fly and let it sling, and you were going to be loud and you were going to be in their face and all those things. And you know what? I just had to figure out, says, look, maybe this is a teaching moment, not a preaching moment. And maybe there's times within that teaching context that you get loud and get vocal and things like that, and it becomes a challenge to the kids that are there. But consider the fact that your tone of voice and things like that maybe you may be talking too softly. You may need to raise your voice just a little bit. So consider those things when you're trying to get your kids' attention. The final thing I would add is this, is that you have to take care. If you have kids tuning out, it's possible that they're a discipline problem, and you have to ask yourself, why are they a discipline problem? First of all, if they're not Christians, maybe they just don't understand. They just don't get the message. They're just not getting, those things, the context, the meaning behind what you're saying, and they have no value towards it. They don't hold any value in their heart towards it. They have, I've been in the situation where I've been in a church before, and I had 2 young ladies who, quite frankly, would talk all during the message. I'm not talking about soft talking. I'm talking about like they're just talking out loud, which told me that they didn't understand the value, not just of my message. They didn't understand the value of speaking or public speaking. They just were just basically rude kids, who just didn't understand why they were there, maybe. And so I had to talk with them, and I shared with them and things like that. And eventually it came to it where they wound up leaving, because they just didn't want to, go with the flow, or whatever that was. That they just didn't want to be a part of that, and I had to accept that. So you have to ask yourself: are their kids not listening because they don't value it? Are they don't accept it because maybe they're not Christians? Maybe they are Christians and they've backslidden. Maybe they're just bored church kids. Kind of do an evaluation on the kids that are in your room and decide, where, those things. Maybe it's a matter of tag teaming some people up. Get the kids who do get it, sit next to the kids who don't get it, and let them be interpreters, if you will, of what you're saying, and let them, help them out with that stuff. Don't do it publicly, but maybe secretly you're saying, hey, will you go sit by so and so tonight? They may not understand what's going on here, and will you help them kind of, grasp, the importance of what's happening within what we're doing. But back to the discipline part, eventually you have to ask yourself whether your kids respect you or not. And if you've not set a tone, the fact is, look, you don't have to respect me. You don't have to respect me, the person, but you do have to, within this context of this youth ministry and within this church, you have to respect the role that I have. Even if you hate my guts, I'm going to ask you to just simply be quiet during the message, tune in. Even if you hate me, you know, just listen. Don't disrupt anybody else. And you say that, and I say that in fun, because eventually you have to work that out. And the kids that you don't think respect you or don't like you, those are the kids you work on during the week. Those are the kids you talk to, you Facebook, you have a chat with, and say, hey, bro, I know we're not getting along real well, but tell me what's wrong. Help me. Help me understand. Is it my speaking? Am I not very good? And you put yourself out there and say, look, I got to find some answers. And sometimes you have to ask hard questions from your kids and say, am I just boring? Do you just not care? Just kind of talk with them and build relationship with them. And the more you invest with them during the week, I've seen from my perspective that the more I invest in a kid during the week, the better they are on Wednesday night, because it's not their first time seeing me all that week. They've seen me once or twice. They've gotten a phone call, a text, a message, something to where I'm just not a stranger to them and that I'm investing a lot. The kids that are acting out or not listening may just be saying, look, I need your attention. I need your help. Please help me. So once you go through and work with the students, talk to the parents. Say, hey, look, I know Bobby's not doing very well. Janie's not doing very well. Can you help me? What is their learning style? What's the best way to help me, help me help them? What's the best way to engage with them? What kind of discipline works with them? Things like that. And then finally, if you're still struggling, you're not getting help from parents or the student, maybe you just need to talk to your pastor and say, hey, pastor, help me out with this. I need your help. what is some advice you would give? Some of the things that I've done, just so you know, things that work for me, I tend to, when I am speaking and I know somebody is talking, I'll do several things. One is I will walk close to them. I like to walk around. So I will go and stand actually almost next to the person that's talking, not like in the middle of the row, but at least in that section. And then sometimes I'll go ahead and I'll come up with a question during my speaking and say, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? And I do that all the time, and it gets kids back focused in. They may not like me later on about it, but they do get focused in and they are listening. And that's, that brings up one more point that I'll add is the fact is this: the more active your kids are in your message, maybe designing your message in a way where you're purposely saying, how do I get my kids actively involved in what I am saying and get them involved with it? And there's a ton of ideas for that, and I'll probably come up with that in maybe my That'll Preach playlist that I have on here. But right now, those are some basic points that I give you today. I hope that you've learned from it. I hope maybe they're of value to you. If you have a tip, maybe something that really works for your kids, or maybe you agree or disagree with something I've said today, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe. I want to keep in contact with you. I want to keep connection with you. And if these things have been of value to do, please leave me a comment below. You can always follow me on Twitter at PaulTurner2. All kinds of ways to get in touch with me. And I look forward to talking to you next time here on Real Time Training. We'll talk to you later.